Today is probably not going to be a productive stream. I'm just going to study IMGUI and continue to build the project that I'm building. But there's a lot of things that I have to study still. And right now, after I did the text and I have the basics of the rendering, I realized this before, but what I'm actually trying to do is a game engine. But I think now is a nice time to study how other game engines work because I was trying to fix, I was thinking about doing this a little bit later on, but the next step that I'm working on right now is finishing off the events. And then as I was doing that, I realized that I'm gonna have to think about how I'm gonna design everything because I have the IMGUI events and I have the application events, and I don't know really well what is the best way to structure everything. So this is the stuff that I'm thinking about right now. So because of that, I remember that what I'm actually trying to do is a game engine, and there are other game engines already. So it's probably a good idea to see or to study how they work and to study the patterns to think about how I'm going to do it. But I think for today, I'm probably going to think about it's probably not going to be very productive because of that. I'm just streaming because there's some time since I've streamed last time. So I'm just going to think about how can I start this. And obviously, along with that, there's going to be a lot of different things. And I came across this playlist on YouTube, which so far seems to be very good, but he didn't talk about the game engine stuff yet. But obviously, he's going to talk about it. And the design that he's going to implement is called ESC, which is Entity Components Systems, which I thought is very interesting. And I think I'm not going to try to follow any specific design. I'm just going to get an idea of how usually they structure these things, and then I'm going to try to do it my own way. And I was thinking about this already, which is, but I'm not really sure if it's a good idea, but based on this pattern, it might be a good idea, which is to just create functions that have IMGUI components, and then I view my application as another component, let's say, as another GUI element. And then I structure each component based on that, which is kind of similar to the way that React works, I guess. But and it seems like this entity components system is similar to that. But then obviously there is a bunch of complications, which is how to structure everything, how to structure the flow of data, and think about all the events and how everything is connected. And this is the stuff that I'm gonna think about it now. Just gonna wait to see if it's streaming here. Yeah. So I think I already read this, and they talk about this is one of the challenges with IMGUI is that there isn't a lot of stuff there out there. There are some videos, but I didn't find them very helpful. So the only way is gonna be to read is the documentation and then read see the example that they give and try to read into the source code. And I've been reading a book now. I read two books, but the other one that I was reading is related to rendering. It was real-time rendering, which I didn't like that much, but now I'm reading another book, which is Game Engine Architecture by Jason something. And I'm gonna finish this video on the other playlist that I'm watching, and then I'm gonna continue to work on this stuff that I'm working on. And there's a lot of things to think about. This Game Engine Architecture by Jason Gregory. One of the main things that so based on what the guy is saying, entity component systems is a composition approach, which from what I've heard, it seems to be the best way. And this is kind of, because of that, I'm trying to avoid going the object-oriented route. But it's kind of for me to still draw the line between the two, because I think both of them for sure use classes, but the difference is in the way that they use the classes. Object-oriented uses more inheritance to manage the flow of data and the structure, I think. And components composition uses more probably dependency injection and like it's separate classes and then they mix together based on the methods and functions, stuff like that. So what I was thinking about doing is to create another class. So I have this is another thing that I'm not really sure if it's worth it to go about it or not. Based the way that I did the events, just because it was the easiest at the time to, because I created another project to debug the tags. I just created, I wanted to create the events so I could have an idea, so I can move the camera and have an idea of the position. And in order to do that, I just got from Raylib the way that they do it. But I'm not really sure if it's the best way to go about it, to be honest. I'm not really sure why it's not showing here. Another thing to realize is that I thought that the way that I did the billboard was wrong because the way that the label was moving, but now I think it's correct. It's just the offset position that is kind of a little bit weird, but it does seem to move in the correct way. And the other thing that I think I'm pretty satisfied with the way that I did the events, but the issue is that the more you zoom in or zoom out, the panning gets weird. And that's because I didn't do the panning in relationship to how much. It's not really zooming that I'm doing, it's dolling the name, which is just moving the camera. Zooming is changing the focal length because the focal length is the thing that is used inside of the perspective projection matrix. Is on the diagonal, is where usually the X and Y positions are at. And they put the calculation based on the triangles, which is going to take into the consideration the field of view, which is the, I'm not really sure, I forgot the nuances, but like I forgot what exactly the focal length is supposed to be. I'm pretty sure that the angle is field of view, probably. So based on the angle, there's some triangle math that interpolates the z positions, which create the illusion of 3D, and that takes into account the field of view, I think, and the focal length, based on the triangle of the near image plane, which is the stuff that you visualize on the screen. So when you actually want to zoom, you have to change that, and the way that, but I don't think that's a very good way to. I prefer the dolly thing, which is just change the position of the camera instead, and that obviously gives the impression that you're zooming. So yes, here. Oh, I think yeah, I put the thing on the. This is another thing that I was thinking about. So the way that I structured this is that I put the graphics. The graphics is the rendering system that I got from a library called 3PP, and then I changed a bunch of things in order to try to simplify as much as possible. And I put it here, and I was thinking about I'm going to create another class that is gonna create a graph structure because I'm thinking about the thing that I'm doing that I want to visualize initially is gonna be a graph that connects the data that I'm gonna parse. And obviously I'm gonna need a graph class, but then another issue that I was thinking about is that the graph class is better if the graph class uses stuff from the rendering, because obviously I'm gonna build the nodes based on the stuff that I have on the rendering system. So I was thinking about creating on these libs here, but that's not it's not gonna be very good because then I'm gonna have to include the graphics on the libs, include the graphics on the graph class, and then I'm gonna have to include the graph class and the graphics on the main project. So now I'm thinking that it's better to probably put on the main project and not separate as an external library the graph. But the stuff related to the application itself, which is going to be, so based on the notes that I took here, I don't remember if this was from the book or from, oh, I think it's from the book because on another thing. So this makes sense probably. So you create a class that contains the overall logic to manage everything. Then this class is gonna have scenes. I don't remember if this is gonna be another class or if it's gonna be like functions. Obviously, like I said, I'm not trying to do exactly what people are saying. I'm just getting an idea, and then I'm gonna see as I go, I think. But I think this makes sense. So each scene is gonna be one page of the application, let's say, and then the game engine has the logic to change between the scenes, and then the scenes have the logic to capture all the information that is happening on the scene. I think that's probably the best way to do it. And then I have to see. But the challenging thing is how, like, which way to go about it first. I have a question for you. Do you know about Handman? Yes, I know. I watched some videos and then I stopped in the middle, I think, because it was just too long. But I'm contemplating whether or not to go back and watch it 2x or 3x speed, all the videos, because they are very good and they do it like he does it from the scratch, which is very good. Hmm. Oh, it's the same person probably on Twitch, on YouTube. Guides and made hero. Apparently, according to the guy on the lecture, nobody does this. This is from a course that they have. I don't know from where it's from, but I think it's like a college or something like that. And the guy puts the lectures on YouTube. And according to him, nobody does this stuff alone. So it kind of got me concerned because it's probably gonna be a lot more difficult than I was thinking. But maybe the hardest part already like was the graphics thing. But yeah, it's gonna be very hard, I think. The rest of the stuff that I have to do. Interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing. The way that I'm going about it now is more I go between waves, let's say. So there's periods of time where I'm doing a bunch of stuff and trying to make a bunch of stuff happen, and then periods of time where I'm just trying to absorb as much information as possible. So that's why I was watching those videos when I did, but now I'm not really sure if it's gonna be good because there's like I think it's gonna deviate too much. It's not the difficult part now is understanding the overall picture of how everything should be connected. And yeah, I'm thinking it's better to just search based on the challenges that I face now. And then once I go through this period of searching a bunch of stuff related to what I'm doing and I have an overall picture, then I think then I think it's a good idea to go back and maybe watch all of these videos to try to see like what is the difference. Yo, thanks, man. Code reloading. Oh, here. That's the downside, and it's not the key's issue because it's just a hard thing to do. But because if you want to do things the real way, then obviously it's going to take a bunch of time, and then there's a bunch of different videos. But then the problem is that you kind of lose the overall picture of how like the stuff. So I think like have to supplement both of them. I'm not gonna watch this now. I'm gonna put the TTS and then I'm going to think about. I don't plan achieving anything now. Like I said, I'm just streaming today because it's been some time since I haven't streamed. But my mind is actually at finishing this playlist here. I watched a bunch of videos already, like a lot. These videos are really good, and there's this other playlist that I want to finish and the book that I'm reading. Maybe I'm thinking about going over the source code of Godot's. I watched a video about the lead dev explaining how it works. but I'm not really sure if it's worth it to go spend a bunch of time. I think it's probably worth it to spend more time focusing on understanding IMGUI because it seems that IMGUI is very used. So the way that IMGUI, the way that people usually use IMGUI is more as a supplementation. So they don't use it as part of the application itself. They use it as because a game engine, most of them that exist nowadays is not only the engine for creating the game, is also the overall GUI layout that helps you debug and build things inside of the game. And IMGUI is usually used more to this implementation stuff. Yeah, it doesn't matter that much to me. Like the search, this Control F works fine. Hot code reloading is really nice. Yeah. I was thinking about this because it's very annoying to compile every time and then you run. So that would be a good thing to. But I'm not really sure if I'm gonna do that now or not. There's too many things to think about. It's kind of hard. Immediate mode graphics. The inventory. Oh, so he invented? God damn. Tier for guides better than Control F. This video transcript. Curious for guy. On the other page we were talking about? Because this is just names. Oh, it's here. Oh, I see. Let's go to reloading. I think it's the same thing, pretty much. Yeah, it doesn't matter that much to me, to be honest. The videos are helpful, but probably not sure if I'm going to do that now. Probably not gonna do it. Watch the video. 'Cause I need to clarify more. I'm most interested now in the game engine stuff, which is kind of hard to find videos about as well. So the playlist I showed there is the best I found so far, and it's probably hopefully the book's gonna have a bunch of stuff, but I'm gonna have to think about a lot as well because each situation is gonna be different. Then obviously the patterns are helpful, but you gotta from other stuff that I've seen from people that are experienced, they say the same thing, is that you should do it on your own first, and then once you face the challenges, then you can think about the patterns. But I also kind of disagree. I think that should be like hand in hand, both. Think about the patterns, and then you build a little bit, then you think about the patterns again, and then you go back and forth. This playlist here. Not sure if I can type. I haven't so far. It's just about this video I watched the 7x speed pretty much because it's just reviewing C++ concepts. But it was the only playlist that I found that's like might be good. The other things is a topic that people don't talk about it very much. And it's understandable. It's another massive problem that we have as a society because like you don't have any incentive to do videos of stuff that actually matters because most people are not interested in that. And it is the exactly the thing that I was talking about this is that like his videos are very good, but it's also at the same time very hard to watch because it needs so much time. And it has to be that way. So like he is kind of an exception to that, but he still like falls into the same thing.
Q. Where's the documentation? This library is poorly documented at the moment and expects the user to be acquainted with C++. The wiki is a hub to many resources and links. Handy getting started guide doing great deer and GUI and existing application. 20 plus standalone example applications using, for example, OpenGL/directx are provided in the example folder to explain how to integrate deer and GUI with your own engine application. You can run those applications and explore them. See demo code in d_demo.cpp and particularly the m_GUI::show demo window function. The demo covers most features of deer and GUI, so you can read the code and see its output. See documentation, backends, examples, fonts. See documentation and comments at the top of m_d.cpp plus general API comments and d.h. The glossary page may be useful. The issues and discussion sections can be searched for past questions and issues. Your programming IDE is your friend. Find the type or function declaration to find comments associated with it. The m_GUI::show metrics window function exposes lots of internal information and tools. Although it's primarily designed as a debugging tool, having access to that information tends to help understand concepts. Return to index. Q. What is this library called? This library is called deer and GUI. Please refer to it as deer and GUI, not m_GUI, not md. The library misleadingly started its life in 2014 due to the fact that I didn't give it a proper name when I released 1.0 and had no particular expectation that it would take.
There is like marks here on the video in the same way that you have on YouTube. That's interesting. That's actually interesting. Like, this is the thing though. Like, I think this is the problem that I have in the beginning. The reason why I didn't start with game engine, and that's exactly the thing that I'm trying to clarify, is, which is the thing that is hard to find that I was talking about. It's like, what is exactly the point of the game engine itself? Like, where do you draw the line? Is a game engine supposed to be used in the same way that a framework is used on the front end, on web dev? Or like, is a library, like, should you build it on top of it? Like, it's kind of weird. There isn't any well-defined separation in my mind. And it's the same thing that I get with this stuff here, is like, at what point should I think about this stuff? And it's like, how does it integrate with the overall thing? Like, should everything be on the same code base? Like, how do you deploy this stuff in the best way possible? That's kind of, it's really hard to find information like that. Oh. But how much experience do you have? Well, it's kind of hard to predict how long it's going to take as well. I underestimated a lot how much time it would take me to render the text, because it was just a difficult problem for me specifically. Other people are gonna have an easier time. It really depends on the way that you think, I think. 90s and how it differs a bunch. And with AI and all this stuff, like, it's constantly changing all the time. But I still find that it's very hard to find information. It's hard to parse through all the noise. And this is a bigger problem with society, of the markets, because of the attention and how everything works. Are these different videos as well? Like, from the day here, it seems that each one is a different video, and then each one has its own timelines. Yeah. This was something confusing on the playlist that I was watching, because there are videos that are on both playlists, which is understandable, but then like the timeline is kind of difficult to. It's not that big of a deal, to be honest.
Other than that, we were in a pretty good position yesterday. I'm going to recap sort of where we were, just so you have a good understanding of what we're going to do in a second here. But basically,
this is another thing that I found it difficult. This is why I was saying that it's good to go back and forth between the two, because since he's doing everything without libraries, then it's kind of hard to think about how to apply my situation. So it's more like I view it more as a clarification thing of how everything is connected. So.
Take off. However, the term MD, immediate mode graphical user interface, was coined before and is being used in a variety of other situations. For example, Unity uses its own implementation of the MD paradigm to reduce the ambiguity without affecting existing code bases. I've decided in December 2015 a fully qualified name deer and GUI for this library. Return to index. Q. Which version should I get? I occasionally tag releases, but it is generally safe and recommended to sync to master/latest. The library is fairly stable and regressions tend to be fixed fast when reported. You may use the docking branch, which includes docking features, multi-viewport features. Many projects are using this branch and is kept in sync with master regularly. Return to index. Q&A. Integration. Q. How can I tell whether to dispatch mouse/keyboard to deer and GUI in my application? You can read the IO.1 capture mouse, IO.1 capture keyboard, and IO.1 text input flag from the MDIO structure. When IO.1 capture mouse is set, you need to discard /hide the mouse input from your underlying application. When IO.1 capture keyboard is set, you need to discard /hide the keyboard input from your underlying application. When IO.1 text input is set, you can notify your OS/engine to pop up an on-screen keyboard if available. For example, on a mobile phone or console OS. Important, you should always pass your mouse/keyboard inputs to deer and GUI, regardless of the value IO.1 capture mouse/IO.1 capture keyboard. This is because, for example, we need to detect that you clicked in the void when focused its own windows and other reasons. Void my low-level mouse button handler in button, bool down, //1, always forward mouse data to GUI. This is automatic with default backends. With your own backend, MDIO and IO equals and GUI colon IO, IO.add mouse button event button, down, //2, only forward mouse data to your underlying app/game. If !IO.1 capture mouse, my_game greater than handle mouse data. Note, the IO.1 capture mouse is more correct than any manual attempt to check if the mouse is hovering in the window. Don't do that. It handles mouse dragging correctly. Both dragging the start of your application or over a GUI window, and handle, for example, pop-up and mobile windows blocking inputs. Note, text input widget releases focus on the key down event of the return key, so the subsequent key of event address your machine will typically have IO.1 capture keyboard equals false. Depending on your application logic, it may or not be inconvenient to receive the key of event. You might want to track which key downs were targeted for your GUI, for example, with an array of bool, and filter out the corresponding key ups. Return to index. Q.
So the last problem I was trying to figure out, and I don't like this documentation very much, to be honest, because I don't understand what they mean exactly by this. So should I use this stuff? Should I always use this and then integrate? It's kind of hard to think about what is the best way to merge the two. I think what they're saying by this is that you have to create a function and then you have to put IMGUI events here, and then you use this stuff, this flag, to put your own events here. But and the issue that I was having is that if I uncomment everything, then it's gonna move the IMGUI stuff. Hey, thanks, man. Maybe the easiest thing that I can do now is to fix these functions here. So this is the stuff that I was talking about. So what I'm doing is just getting the normalized device coordinates, just translating this. The way that raylib captures the mouse position is by putting a callback on glfw, which runs every time that there's an event of the mouse. So glfw is the library that I'm using to create a window, and then they capture events by default, I think. Or like you do some stuff based on the example there, and they capture events. You have to put a call, this thing here, which updates the events for each iteration. Then when you're setting up the window, you can put this callback functions to put whatever functionality you want to happen once there is an event. And I changed a little bit I changed some of them from raylib, but most of them I just copied. They create this global data structure, which this is the thing that I'm not really sure if it's good or not. So like, because I'm not really sure if it makes sense for me to get their stuff and then do another way. Like the challenge is where to put the class. So I'm gonna create the class, I think, to manage the scenes in the same way that they are talking about here, and then each scene is gonna have its own systems, and then the systems are gonna have the inputs and the other stuff that you need. So the way that they talk about it, I think, is that on each thing that it shows up on the scene is an entity. I think the components are probably the GUI or like the elements of the scene. It's not very clear in my mind yet. And the systems is the other stuff, the inputs and maybe other things you need to have. And then you link them together, like in different ways depending on what you want to do. So this is kind of the line that I'm thinking about going with. So based on that, if I create a simple class at the beginning, then I'm going to initialize the class instead of the function that they have, which I also copied from raylib, but I think I did some slight modification to it as well. The function to initialize the window is this one. I put some stuff on IMGUI inside of the function, and then I put this stuff here because on the loop there is necessary. But now that on the loop is necessary to use these functions, IMGUI is IO somewhere. IO is the main data structure that IMGUI uses for the inputs and outputs, as the name says, and they use it here on the example. This code from IMGUI is from the example, and what they tell you to do is to use the show demo window and then see the functionality of this window, and then basically look at the source code to see how IMGUI works. So I put this stuff here because they use there, but if I'm going, obviously it's just a temporary thing. If I create the class, then I put everything inside of the class, and then I just call from that class. So I'm gonna have an overarching class that is gonna connect IMGUI with the graphics that I created, graphics renderer, And based on that, I create the scenes, and then each scene is going to be the way that I'm imagining now, but I'm not 100% sure if it's good or not. It's just like creating components on React, but instead of doing that, I just put the whatever MGU stuff that I want to put, and then I put the render of the application, whatever I want. So I create a renderer, and then I put there. And then each scene is going to have its own state based on that. So that's another thing that's going to be hard to think about because, yeah, I'm not. But I think that the saving state or stuff like that's more related to the data structures and not the rendering itself. So it's more related to the graph, I think. But I'm not really sure. So yeah, the first thing probably that I can do is just change this. So I was gonna talk about the window. So this function is a slight modification of the raylib function. Just put an arbitrary. This is another thing that I want to see is like how to initialize the window at full screen. Not full screen, but taking the whole space of the window. But yeah, so you just initialize GLW and then you pass some flags for OpenGL. You have to remember to comment this out for the release version. Then use this to create the window on, and these are the functions that I was talking about, the callbacks, and these I got from Raylib as well. So they put all these functions, but I'm not really sure if I like it that much, to be honest. So it's kind of hard to clarify what exactly is the best path. So the way that I'm thinking about is to put, so after you have these functions here, then I'm just creating the context from MGUI and passing the GLW window, which is what they tell you to do on the example, and then just initializing OpenGL. So I'm not really sure what is the best way to go about it. Because I guess this is my concern, is that I think I have to change these functions, but then if I change these functions, I have to change the events here that I did, the way that I'm doing the events. But one thing that I really didn't like about the way that Raylib does things, but like it makes sense from their perspective because as far as I can think now, the paradigm that they use is that it makes sense to create the global object and then you capture everything with the global object because it gives you flexibility for like whoever is going to use the library, they can do whatever they want with the inputs. Raylib is just capturing the inputs in the data structure and then you can do whatever you want. But the thing that I really didn't like is that it feels kind of different than the way that it works on the front end, for example, but maybe it's the same thing under the hood. This is what I'm not really sure. But here I have to call this function every time on this loop here. And I don't remember really well how did I have to change. But it's basically this condition here. So this was the main function that I changed because the way that they view it is based on the data structure and not whether or not some event happened. So I think for like in my way of thinking, the way that it would be better is just to attach the event to whatever place of the application that I want, which if I follow this paradigm is going to be the components. So let's say, for example, I have a GUI element and then yeah, a GUI element is going to be from MGUI, but let's say inside of my visualization, I have some part of the visualization that I want some event to happen when the part interacts with the mouse or the keyboard. Like I don't want to have to call that function every time inside of the loop, regardless of whether or not something is happening, because it seems like a waste of computation. So it's much better to have some logic, if you can, that is only gonna trigger if something happens on that part of the visualization. But I think you still have to, maybe you don't have to put, I guess this is the question, is like, I don't understand very well how, and this is something that I struggled since like web development, is that understanding this paradigm of the observer pattern, which is just in web development, you can create a custom events using event emitter, I think. There's some framework that everyone uses, and then I guess I kind of understand how it works. You create a class and you create a queue, and then you allow people to have the flexibility. There is some variation of that on 3PP that's I didn't delete. You just basically are putting you put a functionality on a class that allows you to subscribe to events or not, and then based on the subscription, it puts callback functions inside of a queue that are going to be called whether or not something happened. And I think this kind of makes more sense, but I'm not 100%. I don't have a clear vision in my mind of how to go from the Raylib stuff into this, and I think it's probably what I should do first, because it feels kind of wrong to use the Raylib stuff because they're using more this function paradigm and this global data structure, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think it's better to save all the inputs inside of my own class that I'm going to create, which is the game engine class. But if I do that, I have to change everything. So I'm just going to spend some time thinking about this. And here, it's kind of hard to think about like how these things work. Because one thing that I also really hated about this is that it's very hard to figure out if you have this and you emit an event in some class somewhere in the application, it's very hard to figure out where the thing subscribed to the event in the first place. So I really dislike this about this kind of way to do things. There's probably a better way. But basically the way, maybe I can remember why did I do here, what did I do that is different from what I did. Yeah, I think I did like this. So I'm making it equal to 0 each time, and they don't do that. And then yeah, so this is just getting the delta of they don't do that. So I don't remember if it was just on their example, but I remember getting their example and then trying to apply on the stuff that I was doing. And the issue that I was having is that once you move the wheel just by a little bit, it's just it's gonna increase the value of the wheel forever because there isn't anything stopping. So I had to put this, I had to make it equal to 0 so that I got the delta of how much changed, not what the value is. I think that's what I did. So if the wheel is different than 0, then it means that it was triggered, and then I'm multiplying the delta based on whatever value I want, which is basically the speed, let's say, of the thing. And then this mouse position is very similar, I think. But this one, I think I didn't change. So they just save the current position of the mouse, and then there's some offsets. And they scale. So basically, these guys, as far as I understand, the screen position of the mouse. Then I create this new scale here for Z, which is going to be the current position minus the scale factor, because I wanted to use either minus or plus, depending on what effect you want when you roll up or down the wheel, to see if it's going to go inside of the thing or outside. So I went to minus because of the way that I think is more natural, which I think is rolling down, it zooms out, it goes further away from the visualization, and when you zoom in, goes in the visualization. And now I think I understand why. So on the shader, when you multiply, you pass the inverse of the camera, not the camera itself. And the reason why this happens is because the camera is just like any local object, but you want to visualize everything from the perspective of the camera. So it's like you're moving everything away from the camera, let's say. So you're not moving the camera itself, you're moving things based on the camera. And that's why you send the inverse. If you wanted to change the position of the camera, then you send the matrix of the camera. I might be wrong on that, but that's how I'm thinking about right now. So the mouse position is going to be the position of the screen, and then you use this formula to normalize, I think, the screen coordinates into normalized base coordinates. which are the coordinates used from OpenGL instead of the shader. Then I'm creating a vector. Then this here translates from, it's like instead of going from the world coordinates to normalized device coordinates, it goes from normalized to world coordinates based on the camera matrix that I create there in the beginning, which is the perspective projection. So this gets the inverse and applies the camera matrix world, which is also the inverse of the inverse of the camera inverse matrix. So it's pretty much going the way back from, so I get from the screen and I'm trying to go to the local reference of the camera or of the objects on the visualization. Then the Z becomes the new scale, and here what I'm doing is subtracting this, which is the mouse position, from the camera position. So the camera position is usually going to be at the center, I think. At the camera position, the 0, 0, 0 is at the center of the visualization. I guess this depends on the way that you build everything, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's just getting the distance, which is the direction. So the distance from the point where the mouse is at, and minus the position of the camera, which is the center, and you get the vector. Then you normalize, you get the unit vector, which is just 1, the value. Because you only want the direction, obviously, not the magnitude. And then you multiply this by a scale factor. So it's just getting the distance. It's getting the vector, the direction of the vector, normalizing, and then the magnitude becomes this. And then this becomes the new camera position. So I'm just moving the camera based on that. Based on the distance, X, Y, Z, and then the Z is based on this. I think this one works fine. The only thing that I have to think about is this Rayleigh stuff. Because if I change, then I'm going to have to change everything. And the padding is very similar. You get the mouse position from screen coordinates, and then you move. So here you get the offset. I have some cache, which is the... So basically, once you move only by the amount that the mouse actually moved during the frames. So you have to cache the last position, and then you subtract the current one with the last, and that gets the delta of how much the mouse moved between frames. Then the same thing with the other one, you unproject based on the camera. Guess the thing here. And then, I don't remember really well, why did I put... I remember I was changing a bunch of things to see how it's gonna look. So maybe this one is not necessary. So I'm just getting the delta, and I think these ones are not necessary. Because I changed the way that I was doing. So get the delta, how much it moves. And I think it doesn't matter because since they're on the same values, then when you subtract one for the other, it's going to be on the same magnitude, I think. But I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. And the cache here. And then they become the current one on the end here. Yeah, so I'm moving the camera based on these positions here. And I think what I have to do is just... Yeah, but this is the thing, how I'm going to get the... So this is what I was thinking, is I can multiply this by the camera zoom, I think. Which is just some arbitrary value that they have. It seems that the camera zoom doesn't change. It probably only changes if you change the focal length or something like that. I remember if... So what I was thinking about is every time I zoom in and out, I just multiply by the camera zoom, multiply by the scale factor, or the new scale. Oh, the new scale is the vector. New scale Z, maybe. Let me think. Or I can do based on the Z direction as well. What I want to happen is obviously the further away the camera is, the more it moves based on the thing. So, what will be the correct value here? Obviously I can try a bunch of them. Or maybe just do like this. Oh, but this is always going to be a constant. I don't want that. I guess if I don't need to do this, I can just do the based on the camera's Z position, maybe. And this, I think it has to be, it's probably the aspect ratio. So on the X is going to be probably width by height, and then on the Y, height by width. Something like that. But this is not that hard to change. The hardest part is going to be to think about, which I have to spend some time thinking about it. Like how to change the, if I should change the Rayleigh or not. I feel like I probably should change this. But I'm not exactly sure what to do instead of this. And the annoying thing is going to be a lot of work, but I'm not sure if it's worth it to do this or not. And I should probably create the code for the other class outside of this. For the scene management stuff. The issue here is this. Oh, what? Huh. Oh no, it's here. Yeah. So if I move the thing, then it moves the visualization. Obviously not good. So this is one of the things that I wanted to fix now. Before I did all this other thing, but now I'm forced to think about this. And I couldn't find in the documentation, and ChatGPT gives the wrong answer because I think it's outdated. But it seems that IMGUI has some variables, some flag variables, something like that, that indicates whether or not the mouse is inside of a GUI element or not. So I have to figure that out. But it seems now that is not very good here. Maybe if I just remove the... Or I think it is correct, probably. It's just the... Hmm. It's just the magnitude of things there. So I'm gonna try to remove this. Or maybe I should just copy this stuff so I don't have to do it again. I guess I'm gonna do the aspect ratio now. I'm thinking about... Yeah, but maybe it's not worth it. Obviously not ideal if I do inside of here. It's better if I do it once and then I pass through the function. But I'm thinking whether or not it's worth it to do that since I'm gonna have to change this probably. So just for now, maybe should just do... Not sure if it's gonna be a float. Yes, it has to be a float. I forgot to put the timer here, I think. Oh, 1 hour, then I'll think about it. I'll be right back. I had a feeling that I was gonna do this because the conversion there. Because that doesn't really matter to me right now. Fuck. Well, the other thing I realized that I changed last time, and I didn't change in the example that I did because it's kind of annoying, but like the way that I'm doing the fonts here, and the way that I did this is just for the just to test to see if it's gonna work, everything like that. But now instead of loading the font inside of the shader class, it's obviously much better to load outside. I was thinking about it, because then obviously you load the font only once, and then all the label classes are gonna use the same font. And then I put the logic for the, and in one of the videos I think, or the first video of the playlist there of the game engine, he talks about this. He doesn't talk specifically about this, but he shows one of the classes, and then there is a font struct inside of the class. So I assume that's obviously the best way to do it. So the overall class that manages the scene has the structure that is gonna hold the font, or whatever, how many fonts you want. And then you only load the font once, and the other classes are initialized by that through dependency injection. So that's how I did it on the label now. Yeah, currently, obviously not the correct value there. What is going on? See if I multiply, what's gonna happen. I'm gonna show there the label stuff next. Oh, so now it's better, but it doesn't change on the Y direction. It's weird because it's 0. So I made a mistake here. What is going on? It's because of this. Yeah, but I think now it's probably correct. Because it does feel like it is moving at better speed. Not sure if it's worth it to put the controls. I imagine that the controls is gonna be the easiest part to do it. Or to emulate what I did on the SoftViz stuff on the front end. Because you just create an IMGUI component and then put the... I can put whatever parameters I want there to change the way the visualization works. So that's why I'm not concerned with this stuff very much, because I can always make everything based on the variable and then make the variable accessible to the IMGUI component. And then people can customize however they want. But obviously it's better to have a nice default. So this, I imagine, that's probably going to be a lot easier than it was on the front end. Just create an IMGUI component. And then the data is based on the... It might be hard to synchronize the data of the application with the IMGUI stuff. I think that's the hardest challenge now. Just clarifying the overall structure and how the data is going to flow between everything else. I think it's taking a long time to initialize because I'm streaming. So some of the streams, I realized this some time ago, that I was loading something on stream and then it was taking a very long time. I thought it was my problem. But then once I got out of stream, then it was a lot faster. And I remember hearing, or in a Handmade video, he talks about this as well. There's a video like a long time ago. And I think this is probably because of OBS. OBS is made with Qt, which is a C++ library that's very used to build GUI applications. And then the way that you build plugins for OBS is that you create a dynamic linked library and then you put on one of the folders on OBS. And then it uses... it's still not moving here. It's weird. So obviously the thing is going to be 0 there. That's why it's not moving. I don't understand why 0. So this is 0, but I don't get why. Oh, here I also did this the wrong way. Doesn't make... I technically don't need the thing there, but... I always prefer to put the parentheses anyway because it's just easier to read and less risk that because of the order of precedence you fucks up. I don't understand why this. It's probably some because the conversion of the integer to float. As if yeah, but this is 1, so it's also weird. Because if this is 1, then this should be 1 as well. So that's going on. Maybe it doesn't matter actually, because it feels that is correct, the movement on the X. It's just easier to put like this, and it's probably correct. So that way I just avoid thinking about this. But then it's gonna be 0 if the camera is 0. So let me think about it. But this is another weird thing. Why was it working when it was 0 there? Oh, because the camera is 5, so yeah, it's not correct. I guess I can just do a ternary here. So if the camera is 0, then I just do the value itself. And if it is not 0, then I multiply. It's probably the best way. It's not that bad, the way that it's moving. I think this is fine. Oops. It's probably because of the far plane, so it clips out. Also, something that's it's not that big of a deal, I think. So I'm gonna do a ternary, and not sure if it's better to do it here. Oh, this is bad. There's something going on. Maybe what's this? think what I'm gonna do, the easiest thing to do is probably to just create another. I create another class outside of this, and then I just put, instead of creating this core data structure, I just put the stuff inside of the game engine class that I have. Or I can keep this and then just make this a variable on the game engine. I can't really explain why, but it doesn't sit well with me. This maybe it's just like my thing. I want to avoid making the class very like bloated. I want to make it easier to, as easy as possible to read everything that is going on the game engine class. Because, and this is the philosophy I had since the beginning, which I think is probably the best one, is like try to simplify as much as possible everything, because it's gonna get complex anyway. It's gonna get more and more complex. And then if I'm not careful now with all this stuff, then later on it's gonna be extremely difficult to understand what is going on. So that's what I'm concerned. So I guess this is one of the reasons why like, having this doesn't sit very well on the stuff that I'm doing. But I think the problem is that I don't know if it's gonna be necessary or not to have this stuff, and if there is a better way. One way would be to just put everything on its own thing. Maybe that's the way actually. So I just keep this stuff on the same file, and then I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I separate each of these things on its own thing. And then I make variables inside of the game engine that each one is related to this, and then I initialize the game engine inside of the function. That's probably the best thing to do. Then I have to change all these other functions as well. I guess this is another thing, like, because here like it has to be global because of the way that it works here. So the question that I have now is obviously whether or not it makes sense to me that these arguments are going to be determined by g of w, because they don't specify them here. So this is kind of the issue. So I guess I have to study these functions here. Because what I'm also trying to avoid is doing a global variable, because I don't like very much the way that C++ works with global variables. So it would be better. And another thing that I was thinking about is what kind of stuff I'm going to return here, because on the other one I need the window. So I think probably what I'm going to do is just put the window inside of the other data structure. And the main data structure that I use to do everything is going to be the engine. So I initialize the engine in the beginning of this function, and then I make all the other variables inside of the engine. And that's probably the best way to do it. It's not perfect, but of course. Yeah, this is the problem. I think like it has to be some aspect ratio thing, because it is going faster on the X probably than the Y. Like it's not, the proportions are not correct because they depend on the window, obviously. It's probably the best thing to do in the beginning is to just replace the. I'm gonna create another file. I'm gonna close everything. Because in order to replace, it's better to have the other class, because then if I leave everything separate, it's gonna be annoying. So I'm just gonna replace core with engine, and then make the variables inside of the thing. This is probably not necessary as well, so I'm just gonna remove like this other struct here. Also, the shader was gonna show this stuff. What I'm gonna do now is just I'm gonna create another file and HPP files ++ file to start creating the class that is gonna be the game engine. And I'm just gonna separate these structures there into their own thing on that file, and then I'm gonna create a variable inside the global that is gonna be related to each thing. Or basically these functions here that it's probably the init font function. So before it was dependent. Yeah, I'm not doing the init font here, I think. Yeah, and also I realized that it's better to do this according to ChatGPT, but I also just based on intuition, I think it's recommended to do this initializer list instead of initializing here. Instead of the class, as I was doing before. So I was making it equal here. And if we do this, then it doesn't matter that the functions are called inside of the constructor, because they are going to be called with the new value. So I removed the init font function, and now I'm just receiving the source fonts as a structure. And then here on the outside, this is something else that you should think about. I think it's fine to do like this, but based on the logic that I had there on the renderer, the way that I was thinking about doing, and I'm probably still gonna do, it's because I imagine it's gonna get more complex at some point, but I have logic. I'm gonna create logic inside of the programs class to select which shaders should use, but the label shaders are separated from that, and then thinking about whether or not it's worth it to put them together there. But I think it doesn't make sense, because if I do that, then I'm forced to put the shaders related to the label program in the functionality of the programs class, which is not very good, because I think it's better to couple them with the mesh class, because then it allows me to have flexibility to select whether or not any mesh is gonna have a label or not, instead of putting that functionality on the programs class, which wouldn't make a lot of sense, I think. So the way that I'm doing now is just I'm making it optional to put for each mesh class, I put the functionality on the mesh class itself, and then each mesh class is optional to, I can just call this function to create label, and then I can create a label for any class, I think. So I copied some of the functionality from 3PP, the way that they do it. Just create a shared pointer, and then it creates some function to access the label, which is this one. And I copied this from this one. And it's stored here on the mesh. And then this is the part that I'm not 100% sure, because now I'm just copying the position of the... This is the thing that made me think that for some reason the billboarding is making the position weird, the movement of the position, and I was trying to think about how to change that, but the movement is fine. It's just that even if I copy the position of the mesh, the label is not, it doesn't overlap the mesh. It's just a little bit off. I think that's the reason why it puts there on the... I think I'm doing something, but I don't remember. I'm just copying the starting position. So they are supposed to be overlapped because it's just the same position, but for some reason it's not, but I think it's fine if I do it like this. And then I just add the label, and this comes from the object 3D. The object 3D has all the functionality to move the matrices that stores the state for each geometry. And this is another thing that I'm thinking about that is not very good. So I have to because basically the way that I'm doing now, I already changed a little bit, but I'm not really sure. I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but I don't think it's very good to do like the way that I'm doing here, because the issue is that the label and the mesh are kind of, they're two different things, obviously. So, but every time that I change something, I have on the render functionality, I have some logic that is going to check to see whether something changed on the mesh, and then only if it did change, then you update the uniforms. Because it seems that uniforms are something that costs a lot to do. So if you update uniforms each time inside of the rendering cycle, it's not very optimal, obviously. It's much better if you can update them only if something changes with the mesh. But then the issue is that I have to figure out how to couple the change on the mesh and the change on the label, and then that's going to depend on what kind of functionality I want. So for now, I'm thinking that it's probably better for them to always have the same color. So I'm pretty sure I didn't do this here, so maybe. And I think this is the issue, because the mesh is made out of the material and the geometry, and this update color function comes from the material, and the material doesn't have access to the label. That's the problem. So when I update the color here, so what I should probably do is to have a... Yeah, I should put this functionality on the sphere itself, probably. It's probably a good idea to do this now. But I have to consider whether or not delete this from the... I think it's probably not a good idea to delete from the material. So maybe if I put update mesh color. So I'm just gonna copy the stuff from this one. I do this. Oh, actually, because maybe if I do this. Yeah, material dot gas. It doesn't matter that much, I think. We're just gonna do it like this. So another thing is that the reason why I'm changing each color specifically is because I wasn't sure about the memory from C++. Because obviously I can pass another color object here. And also I think it's probably not ideal to do this because it's just gonna be a lot. And you have to create a different color object, so it's probably better to just change the values of the existing one. So maybe this it's fine. I don't remember if I did this on the label class as well. But I think on the main rendering cycle, I just do it based on the material. So if the material needs an update, I sat here, and then here, I think I update the label color. So this is the part that I was saying that if I want the function, if I want to make it possible for the label to have a different color than the material, then I should change this. But then it becomes annoying because I'm gonna probably have to pass here. So this is the thing that is kind of hard to think about because it's connected with everything else, with the design of everything else, I think. Because this function I did initially thinking about, which I remember spending a bunch of time thinking about this as well, because I knew that like it could be problematic. But for now, the way that I was thinking about is that this is gonna be the functions where I'm gonna put some control flow to, based on whatever material I have, I decide what kind of uniforms I have to update for the material. And because of that, it doesn't like. But since that every mesh is gonna has the possibility of having a label, then I think it's fine. So it's not that big of a deal either, I think. But because I'm updating here, I'm only making the logic. But this is the thing that is kind of not ideal, I think, because and the thing that I was saying about being like they're decoupled, so it increases the chances of mistake. That's the problem. Because then I have to remember if, and I have to do things thinking about that it might not be me working on this code base. So if I do things like this, then I have to remember every time that I change the something on the material. On the rendering cycle is going to depend on whether or not the flag variable is set on the material and not the label. But the thing is that it's kind of hard to think about like how to do it differently, because if I don't have a flag variable, then I'm gonna have to put some massive thing here, a bunch of conditions. So obviously that doesn't make a lot of sense. I think I'm just gonna leave like this for now. So and then here I'm gonna update the. Oh, let me think about this. I don't need to update the label here because it's gonna be updated on the rendering cycle. I think this is fine. Maybe actually, now that I think about it, it makes more sense. I think if I move the functionality to here, then I can remove from there. That makes more sense. Yeah, so I'm gonna do that. And now that I think about it, this solves the thing that I was saying. I don't know why I didn't think about this before. The only downside is that I have to remember, but I have to. The downside is that I have to remember that to use this one instead of the update color. But it doesn't matter that much because, and it's also nice to be able to have the update color on the other one, and then just update the color of the material and not the label. So what I'm gonna do is just remove the functionality from here, I think. This makes a lot more sense. So first I'm gonna test to see if it's gonna work with using this function here. Also, it's weird. But I didn't. Oh, I did. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be red there. That's weird. Since it is red here on the one, and it should go here, and then it should do this. I don't understand why it's 'Cause I'm pretty sure it wasn't working before. Hmm. Maybe I was confusing the... Because initially the reason why I changed there is because there was more elements that I was rendering there. And I think I confused from which element the label was for. So I thought the colors were wrong. But now it seems that it is working. It's kind of weird. Also, it's not changing the color there, I think. It's a 0. I'll be right back. So maybe the function also, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, so it is working. It's weird that the color is white here though. Like, why is it changing the color here? Hmm. Because now there isn't. Yeah, not really sure what is going on. I guess like it's something to do with because I'm initializing. I'm not setting the color though, based on the, or maybe I am. So I am setting the color based on this. So yeah, I'm initializing with this color and then I'm updating the tint color. But this one I got from, I think, Raylib as well. And I'm not really using this directly. I think you just like the color is just gonna be based on this one, which is the one passed here. So this is the function that matters, I think. So because it's not, I'm not calling anything related to this class there, you shouldn't be changing the color, I think. Because if I don't put the, if I don't update the thing, then it's the same color, but if I update, then the label has a different color, which is kind of weird. It would make sense if I was updating the value here, but so what is going on? Yeah, the only thing that makes sense is that it is something related to memory because of the way that I'm initializing there. So I think I'm passing the, it's probably that, I'm passing a pointer. This is something that I was trying to clarify before that I still don't understand very well. But I think that's how it works. Like, because even though I'm not specifying that it's gonna be, so in my mind, the way that I think it works, yeah, I think I remember seeing something like that actually. So like, the way that I was thinking about it is that if you don't put this symbol here, I forgot how to say this, this symbol or this symbol to represent, like this one represents the address and this one represents a pointer, which is very similar but not the same. But if you put that on the argument there, then it's just gonna take the address of whatever you pass. And in my mind, if you don't put it, then it's just gonna copy the data structure and use the copy. So it's not using the original one. But I think that's not true if you use an array or a struct, because the data structure is too big. So I think that what's happening under the hood is that C++ is creating a pointer even if you don't specify that it's gonna be, whenever you're passing an array or a structure to a function. So it might be what's happening here. Yeah, because inside of this, the way that I'm initializing the other one is by passing the material color. I think that's what's going on. But it's weird that it's not the same though. That's the thing that is strange. And I'm pretty sure that I'm passing. Oh no, I'm getting the address. So maybe if I remove this. Like, the thing that I don't get is that, like, if when I change the values here, I'm changing the same struct that both classes are using because I'm creating a pointer on the label and not copying the thing, right? Like, I'm initializing the thing as the address and not a copy. Then it should change all the values and it should be the same color. So the thing that I don't understand is why. I guess it's because one of the colors is the same, so it really doesn't change anything. Yeah, it might be the reason. So let me think about it. But it's probably better to do it like this. I'm thinking about whether or not I should remove the address there and put so they are separating, but it's probably better to make it as the address because then is they're yeah, but maybe not actually. So what I'm gonna do is just change like this. 0, 0. And that way they all start like this. It's probably gonna be the same color, I think. It's slightly different. So I understand what's happening. So the reason why it is like this, I think I understand, is because this is being refreshed each frame. So it's updating the color each frame. And because of that, you get this effect, which seems that it is a different color, but it isn't. And here it just updates one time. That's what's going on, I think. But why would that be the... Yeah, it shouldn't be the case because after I update there on the rendering cycle... but it doesn't matter because I'm calling here, so it doesn't make sense. So I'm refreshing the thing on the rendering thing. Huh. And so if I do it outside of the loop, it's gonna be the same color, I think. I did it inside to see initially whether the function was working or not, to check for the rendering. So I was flipping between two different colors. Oh, it's still the same. Weird. Oh, it's probably because the label has... So that thing doesn't matter. That was saying inside of the loop. It's probably because the sphere label has one... but it shouldn't be, because it should be the same. That shouldn't make sense. So I'm not really sure though. Not really sure what's going on. Oh, so the sphere is not changing now. That's what's going on. It's one is white, so the sphere is not changing. So I think it is working. So it doesn't matter that it is the address. It doesn't change when I update the color material. But I don't understand why though. It doesn't. Because if I'm passing the address here, it should be using the same object. So when I change the values of the colors of this, it should change the values of the other one. Oh, but it doesn't matter because I'm not using the same. Yeah, this is the reason why. Is because so I think it is gonna change the values of the tint variable that I have here, but I'm not using this one to update the color. So it doesn't matter that much, I think, either way. So the way that I'm gonna leave there is it's probably fine. But first, I'm gonna test if this is working. Then I'm gonna leave it like this, and then I just update from this update mesh color function whenever I have to. Actually, it might be better though if either way, it shouldn't matter because either using the tints or the other one in the beginning, they are both gonna be addresses, so it doesn't matter that much. But obviously, the reason why it's only updating one is because I changed there on the rendering cycle. Or maybe you should put some other color. It doesn't matter that much. It just should be more visible.
Isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience.
It is working. Nice. So now what I'm gonna do is just create another file and then start thinking about the... Like I said before, I didn't plan to do anything today. Just stream and think about this sometime. I'm going to... It's probably better to wait until I finish the playlist and the book that I'm reading about architecture, so I have a clear picture on how people usually do this stuff, because that way then I don't start and then have to change a bunch after. So probably creating the file here. I don't know if I should create a folder or a file, but probably start with the file. So creates one file here and then here. It doesn't matter that much anyway, because the only thing that path is gonna change is on the CMake list file, so I think it doesn't matter. But it's probably the engine is gonna be on the root, and the other stuff might be on folders. Maybe I should put this. I'm going to stop streaming now. So next stuff that I'm gonna do. So it's probably gonna be some time to stream next time. I'm gonna finish the playlist there. Finish watching all the videos there that I have to watch and finish reading the book. But probably what I'm gonna do next is just continue to work on this class here. And the thing that I'm thinking about doing, the thing that I'm focusing the most now is thinking about the overall architecture, how it's gonna be, how I'm gonna merge IMGUI events with the events on the application. And then what is the best way to construct the scenes in a way that's gonna be easy to store the data and send data between multiple different scenes. That's the main thing that I'm thinking about now. So the first challenge when it comes to that is figuring out how to make it so that when I have an event on the application, it doesn't move the IMGUI thing. So when I click on the IMGUI, it shouldn't move the stuff on the application. And I think probably the stuff that I should do is related to this, but I don't like the way that they explain here because it's kind of confusing to me. It's probably because I don't have don't have any experience building this C++ stuff, but I imagine that I'm probably gonna try some, but this part's probably not gonna be the hardest, I think. Like the hardest is just thinking about how to structure everything. But probably what I'm gonna do is just create the engine class, and then I'm gonna remove the... I'm gonna refactor the stuff that I did based on the Raylib, on the setup window thing. And then I'm just gonna move the data structure, this core data structure. I'm gonna remove each struct from here and just put outside. And then each value inside of the engine, the engine is gonna be like main window, or I'm gonna put a prefix there to maybe I put Ray window. No, actually I'm not. Maybe engine window, something like that. So engine window, and it puts main window, and I'm gonna put these variables like this on inside of the main class. Gonna be the engine class. Gonna store this stuff. And then I'm also gonna put the stuff related to IMGUI, obviously, and this is the thing. I'm gonna have to think about like what is the best way, because obviously all of them are gonna be dependent on the GLFW window. So what is the best way to structure the relationship between them? That's what I'm thinking about. And there are probably gonna be variables inside of the engine. Then once I create that, what I'm gonna do is just create the first scene, and then the first scene is gonna have the stuff that I have on the main loop there now, which is just gonna be some IMGUI elements and the application, and something that I have to think about as well, but I'm probably gonna do just way later on, because the way that I'm thinking about now, like what I wanna reproduce is the stuff that I have on the front end there, on the Softviz Verso site, which is just gonna be a main thing with the application that is gonna display a graph, that is gonna display data. And then on the other parts, you're gonna have the GUI elements to interact with the graph, but I'm not gonna clip the application. I'm just gonna put the IMGUI elements in front of the application, but that's not ideal, obviously. So later on, probably what I'm gonna have to do is to finish this that I refactor just to make everything work. There are some functions here that we're supposed to set the viewports. So I imagine what I have to do is just change this render class so that is based on a window that is inside of the main window. So it works like in the same way that a GUI element works. So I can put the space of the application separated from the other stuff that is happening. But I think I'm just gonna do that way later on. First, I'm gonna focus on trying to understand what is the best way to integrate the IMGUI events with the application events. And then once I do the first thing with some IMGUI elements and the own render that I have, probably I'm gonna focus on the events first. So focus on the events. Then once I do that, then I create the first scene with the basic elements. Then once I have that, then it's probably gonna be easier from that point, because you're just reproducing this stuff and putting everything on functions. So I'm thinking about like something similar to React, where like you can make components based on these things here. Yeah, but I have to read a lot, and yeah, so I'm gonna stop here. Probably in a few days I'm gonna continue to work on this projects. So see you then.